So black and white conversion, as we see, is an art. Now, why is black and white conversion an art? It is an art because through black and white conversion, we determine which color will be rendered how. For example, consider you have taken a picture of a landscape with a bright blue sky and fluffy clouds. Okay. Now, when you convert that to black and white, how will the blue look like? Will it look light gray? Will it look white? Will it look dark gray? Will it look gray with a tint of dark gray? These decisions are made in Photoshop, and these are called conversions, black and white conversions, and that's how we love it. Now, here's the thing. Black and white conversion is essential because if you just go ahead, take away the saturation, the image just looks flat. It's a no-brainer. If you just go ahead, take away the saturation, it's just a flat image with no colors. There's no art in it. Now, what do I mean by that? For example, if you have an image, let's go ahead, File, New Document. Let's open up an image and hope you guys are having a good time today. So if we go to New Document and let's open up anything. This is just for understanding purposes. And suppose the background is blue. So we go ahead and create a solid color adjustment layer and let's choose blue. Okay, so you have a blue background and then you take a picture of an orange fruit. Yeah, have you eaten orange before? I guess you have. So you have taken a picture of an orange, which is just like in the front of the background, the blue background. Okay. Now, since it is a color image, the orange will pop out. The blue is different from the orange, so the orange really pops out of the photo, really jumps out of the screen, looks great to you. But if you make it black and white, here's how it will look. So right now, if I go ahead, create a shape and let's color it orange. Okay, now this is an orange, this is standing out from the background. Now here's what happens if you just take the saturation out. So let's open up a hue saturation adjustment layer. If you just take the saturation out, whoa, you cannot even make the difference. Why? Because the saturation of the colors was same, the luminosity was same before converting this to black and white. So we need to figure out how each color will be rendered when you're converting it to black and white. Otherwise, just like this, it will turn out to be a flat image. Did you get it? If you have any doubts, make sure you ask that. Bob Stein says, I don't know why, but I never get the audio from these live sessions. Is the audio right, Andrew? Everyone else getting the audio right? Let me know if the audio is not right. So I'll just go ahead and check it again. Okay, so this was it. But instead, here's what I would suggest. Instead of adding a hue saturation and taking away all the saturation, here's what I would suggest. Create a black and white adjustment layer. Click on this gray-white icon, the adjustment layer icon, and click on black and white. Okay, so there we go. Where did that go? Black, white. There we go. Now here, as you can see, it's still converting to black and white, but you can make out the difference between the orange and the background because this gives you some sliders. If I just pull it out here, this gives you some sliders. See, the blues are pulled a little bit to the left, which means the blue will be darker. Now these sliders determine the luminosity of each color. What do I mean by that? These sliders determine the brightness of each color before you converted that to black and white. So for example, right now we have the blue slider. So whatever was blue before converting this to black and white, the brightness of that will be controlled by this slider. Okay, if I take the slider all the way to the left, see it becomes black, all the way to the right, see it becomes white. So this is just a basic understanding of how this is happening. Now, what if you want orange? What if you want to control orange? There's no orange slider. Well, standard grade 5, grade 4, primary colors, secondary colors. You know, when we mix red and yellow, what do we get? Orange. So we equally take the sliders of the red and yellows to the left or the right we will be able to control the luminosity of the oranges. So red has some portion, yellow has some portion. Equally just increase or decrease it, and we will be able to control the oranges. So that's how this works. So instead of taking away all the saturation, we do this. Pretty basic stuff, right? Now let us apply this actually. So let's close it and let us apply this to this photo. Okay. Now, here's the key. Every image is made up of 3 colors. Every image that you see on the screen, that you capture by your camera, it has 3 colors. What are those colors? R, G, and B. Red, green, and blue, right? You agree by that? Okay. Now, these red, green, and blue combine to give you the full colored image. And you can look at it by going to channels. Channels has red channel, green channel, and blue channel. Now you might say this is black and white, but here's what's happening. These are not actually black and white. These are just representations. Okay? If we go to the red channel, look at these areas. These are completely bright, which means this area has a lot of red in it. Similarly, in the red channel, look at this area. This area is very dark, which means it has very less red in it or no red in it. Instead, if you go to green channel, have a look. This area is darker than it was in the red channel, which means it has very less green in there. But this area is brighter in comparison to the red channel because this has more green. Obviously, because it is a tree. So these are just representations. And if you're having any trouble understanding them, you can also look at colors. You can go to Edit and then Preferences. If you're using a Mac, it would be in Photoshop, and then Preferences, Edit, Preferences, and you can just open up the preferences, and there will be a thing called, inside the interface, Show Channels in Color. If you check this, it will show you the channels in colors. Okay, I just didn't click OK. Let's go again, Edit, Preferences, and then Interface. Click on Show Channel in Color, click OK, and there we go. Look at this area, so much of red. Look at this green, not so much, but this one has a little green. Look at the blue. And if it is easier for you, you can use this, but I think black and white is much more indicative of which color is more where. Now, why am I explaining you this? This was important because we're going to use this basic theory to get our black and white conversion on point. So first of all, let's go to Preferences back in Interface and let's check that off and click OK. Now, if you look at the red channel, we can see so much more details in the clouds, right? Which means if we brighten up the reds, we can have much more details in clouds. So let's select the RGB again and then come back to layers. Now add a black and white adjustment layer, and then we know, we had a look in the channels, that if we go ahead and increase the reds, we'll have much more details. Let's just get that out. Okay, so have a look at it. Just an instant increase in the red slider gives us so much more details. Have a look. Awesome, isn't it? Now let's try in the other sliders. So this area was yellow before we converted it to black and white. So this controls the luminosity or the brightness, perceived brightness of yellow area. If you want to have a little less detail, okay, just like that, that's fine. Green areas. If you go a little extreme, you see something called banding. These lines, which looks not good. Okay, so you need to be avoiding banding and go a little, not too much, a little. Okay, if that's a raw photo, it gives you much more leeway into how much you can move the slider. Now let's look at the seance. Depends, if you just go ahead and increase that, see these lines, banding, you gotta stay away from this. Okay, so this looks good to the left, blue to the left, looks good that way, magentas to the left. Wow, it looks awesome. Now have a look at the before and after. Before, after. Isn't that beautiful? Now if you had just used the hue saturation, look at how flat it would look. So this is just hue saturation, taken away the saturation down, and this is the black and white adjustment layer. Now once you add the black and white adjustment layer, we know anytime we make something black and white, we want something extra, and that's what? Contrast, right? We want a little more contrast to it, a little more fun to it. Now there are two ways to add contrast. One is the beginner's way and one is the right way. If you're using Photoshop, you gotta use this way at least. Advanced way is using the curves, but at least you got to use this if you're just doing it very quickly. If you don't want to be like a beginner, use this. And this is called the levels adjustment layer. Click on this icon and do not add brightness, contrast and hues contrast. No, that's a really beginner's way, really basic way. You don't want to do this. You want to go to levels. So click on levels and you have this. Now the levels adjustment layer has 5 sliders. Let me just briefly go through what they do. Now you can obviously go to red, green and blue if this was a color image, but this is black and white, doesn't really matter. Go to RGB, and then the slider on the left, the top left, this makes the dark things darker. Very easy. This makes the dark things darker. The slider on the right, on the top, this makes the bright things brighter. The slider at the bottom right makes the bright things darker. And the slider on the bottom left makes the dark things brighter. Okay, the slider on the bottom right makes the bright things darker, and slider on the bottom left make the dark things brighter. As simple as that. Now, if you want to increase the contrast and if you want to make the dark areas more darker without blowing out the white areas, without blowing out the bright areas, just use this slider. If you use the contrast slider, it also blows out the highlights and takes down the shadows. So you need to find out whether you just want to work on the shadows or just want to work on the highlights. What do you want? So this gives you much more option. The slider in the middle controls the midtones. If you take it to the left, it brightens up the midtones. If you take it to the right, it darkens up the midtones. So I'll take it a little bit to the right, just like that. This one a little bit to the right. And then brighten up the shadows just a little bit to give it a little tint. Have a look at the before and after. Have a look. So this is the before. This is the after. Depends upon what your taste is, what you want from this photo. Totally depends upon it. And that was it. Now you can of course go ahead to the reds or the greens or the blues and then maybe introduce a little blues on the shadows, right? Or maybe if you want to introduce the yellows, use this because yellow is the opposite of blue. And that's pretty much it. Let's introduce a little bit of blue to the shadows if you want that. If you want a little bit of yellows, you can also get it, giving this a nice colored look. So before, whoops. So there we go. Before, after. Just the saturation. Look at how bad that was looking. This is so beautiful. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, make sure you ask that. Okay. So, all right. So doesn't seem to have any questions. Now let's move on to the second way. So the second way is using Adobe Camera RAW, and I already have a tutorial about this, but I will go a little more in depth into this one. Now let's go ahead and come back to our second image. I think I'll be using this as a photo. So let's go ahead and use this as a photo. Now if you were using a raw photo, here's what you would do. When you import that, you already open that up in Adobe Camera RAW, and then you can make the adjustments there itself instead of having to do right here. Now I had to explain a little bit of theory behind it before we go into it. Now there's an option when you open the raw photo, there is indeed an option that you can actually hold the shift key, and when you hold the shift key, instead of open image, there's another option that comes up, that's open object. And if you click that one button, it opens your image as a smart object, which gives you the ability to always go back to the raw settings. Always just double click on it, go back to the raw settings. Okay, so there we go. Alicia says, will this video stay up? It probably will. Katie says, how would you make the clouds more prominent? I just did that. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up the image again. And let me answer your question, how to make the clouds more prominent. And if you could explain what prominent actually means, that would be better. My English is not that excellent. So I think you want more details in the clouds. Here's what I would do. So when we were using the black and white adjustment layer, we'll come again to this one. Katie will come again to this one using another method, but let's just do that using the previous method that we just explained. So here's what we would do. So the clouds are reddish. If we just turn off this, have a look, the clouds are reddish, right? And the sky is bluish. Now, if we brighten up the reds and darken down the blues, it will become more prominent. If I'm just getting the meaning of the prominent right. So if you want the clouds to be more visible, that's one of the techniques that we can use. Whatever the color the cloud is, brighten that up. Whatever the color the sky is, darken that down. Or do the opposite, darken the clouds and brighten the sky, depending upon the mood. So here in this case, I'll just brighten up the clouds just like that and darken the sky. And this makes things more prominent. Wow. Have a look at the before and after. Before, after. Look how much more prominent the sky looks. Now here is one of the drawbacks of using the black and white adjustment layer, and that drawback is this. We've already went through this while we were doing it, and it is this: if we take down something too much, these lines begin to show up. See, if we take down this, see these lines, they look ugly, they look really ugly. Look at the yellows. If I take down that much, it looks really, the thing doesn't look real. So you need to be very careful with these sliders. And the next method which I'm going to teach you, I think that's the third method, doesn't go through this. So every method has its own pros and cons. But if you use any method carefully, it's going to be great for you, because every method uses the same basic principle. So let's go ahead and close that down, and let's use the Adobe Camera RAW method. Alyssa says, "You're so good at pronouncing my name." Normally it's not the case. Did I pronounce your name right this time? I'm so sorry if that's wrong. Thank you for answering. You made the clouds heavenly beautiful. Thank you so much, Katie. And I'm glad that you're present and attending the live stream. Thank you, everybody who is present. Okay, so now let's move to Adobe Camera RAW. Amazing settings. So there we go. Now, just go to Filter and then Camera RAW filter. Let's just unlock this. And what I would personally do, I would convert this into a smart object. And before that, how did I unlock this? If you're wondering, just click on the lock and it unlocks this layer. Now, convert this into a smart object. Why? Because we always want to have the ability to go back, right? If you do something and we are humans, you always want to go back and make things right. And whenever you have the chance, you should do it. So let's convert that into a smart object. So go to Filter, Convert for Smart Filters, or you can right click here and choose Convert to Smart Object. Two of any of the two things, that pretty much does the same thing. So go to Filter, Convert for Smart Filters, and click OK. And this is converted into Smart Object. How can you tell that? Well, there's a symbol there on the right button. You can tell it that way. And by the way, if you want to make the thumbnails bigger, not related, but I do sometimes right click here and choose large thumbnail or small thumbnail, so whatever you're comfortable with. Now, go to Filter, Camera RAW Filter. Now this opens up the image in Camera RAW. Adobe Camera RAW, when you open up a RAW photo, it does pretty much the same thing. Irvin says, just joined, missed a lot, I guess. No, there's so much more to do. How do we know if a colored photo will look better in black and white even before doing the conversion? Great question, Ato. How do you pronounce your name? Please leave that down in the comments. So, very valid question, very nice question. And the only way we can do it is by just a quick conversion into black and white, and look how it's looking. That's number one. Of course, that's going to be the most obvious thing, to have a look at how it will look in black and white by just doing a quick conversion. So in Lightroom, there's a black and white button which you can just click, and there's also a shortcut. I think it's V. There's a shortcut and there's a button which you can click and convert that in black and white and convert back into color and see which one looks good. Also, if you really want to have a look, if looking at from a theory perspective, see, when the colors are boring, then we convert our image to black and white. Number three. So number one, you gotta have to look whether it looks great in black and white. It's just a matter of a click, matter of a button. Just have to look. In Photoshop, just add a hue saturation, adjustment layer, take away the saturation, turn it off and on. You'll have a general idea whether that looks better in black and white or color. So number one, trial. Number two, when the colors are boring, convert that into black and white or monochrome. Do anything you want when the colors are boring. Number three, when it's much more about the shape and form than the color, then you convert that into black and white. Number four, when the color is used for emphasis, Okay, this is important. When the color is used for emphasis, just as an example I gave you, if there's a picture of an orange with a dark blue background, because of the color of orange, the orange is really popping out of the photo, really grabbing our attention. At that point of time, you do not want to convert that into black and white. So, number 4, if emphasis is used, do not convert that into black and white. If color is playing any role in getting the images better, getting the images much more, adding much more story to the photo, do not convert that into black and white. Okay, so here we were. Now, Kevin says, large thumbnail, mind blown. I don't know what was mind blowing in that. That was just simple thing. And by the way, I'm so happy that your mind is blown. I just hope that didn't happen literally. Anyway, so there we go. So first off, what you got to do, you got to convert that into grayscale. So instead of going here and checking convert to grayscale, and by the way, if you're wondering whether this will look black and white better or color better, just check this and check out and look, see which one looks good. So instead of just clicking it here, what you can do with the targeted adjustment tool, I think it was this one, right click on it, hold the right click and choose grayscale mix. Okay, it converts it into black and white. Now once it converts it into black and white, come back to the basic, and then what's the first thing that we're looking in a black and white high contrast photo? Contrast, right? So simple. You know what? Contrast is one of the most underutilized slider in Lightroom. People just don't use contrast. People think, okay, we'll do the highlights and the shadows and the whites and the black. Heck, we don't need contrast, but sometimes contrast works wonders. So first off, let's go ahead and increase the contrast a little bit. Wow. Wow. It looks amazing right out of the box. Then you want some more details in black and white, right? So how do we get details? Clarity, simple, not too much, because if you go too much, it will add some halos. So this is fine, I guess. 30 is fine. Now, just have a quick look at the before and after, before, after. If you want to know the shortcut, it's P. P for pet, P for penguin, P for polish, P for... Anybody P there? No. Okay. So P for P that I just did before the live stream. So P, have a look at the before and after. Fantastic, isn't it? Now, you can always go to this one, HSL Grayscale tab, and hunt around whether that red looks good there or the orange looks good this way. Or what you can do, you can click on the targeted adjustment tool, and then if you want to brighten her face, click and drag it up. If you want to darken the sky down, click and drag it down. As simple as that. If you want to darken her clothes, darken her dress, click and drag it down. Simple, isn't it? If you want to darken, maybe brighten up her eyes, let's zoom in quite a bit and click and drag it up. Find a balance. If you want to brighten up her hair, click and drag it up a little bit. Brighten up the sky, click and drag it down. Just like that. Darken up this a little bit. Fine, that looks fine. Brighten up this even more. That looks fine. Now you can come back to the basics and decrease the exposure. And once you decrease the exposure, you can again go back to this one. It's always playing with the sliders. There's no step involved in anything, because photography and retouching is an art. And art is very different from math. So there we go. Now we can go ahead and increase the brightness even more. It looks really fantastic. Now, of course, you can see a lot of banding here. Why? Because this is a very low-res JPEG photo. This is not a RAW photo. If this was RAW, you would not see that. Now, once you're satisfied, click OK. Now, since this is a RAW photo, you can always go back to the settings. So you can double-click on the Camera RAW filter. It always comes back with those settings as it was before. Now you can even go ahead and set the white point and the black point, so on and so forth. Do all the stuff that you want. Try different temperatures and look which temperature looks good to you. I think the temperature was all right. Maybe decrease it a little bit. And there we go. Click OK. You can always change that. Now, comes to the banding. Now, what to do of the banding? Now, there are two ways to remove banding. Number one, okay? Number one, So were we offline? Okay, so yeah. So number one, blur it out. Wherever there is banding, just blur it out. Or add some noise, and we're going to use both. So first of all, we see the banding in the sky. Okay, so first off, we got to select the sky. How do we select the sky? Click the quick selection tool, select the quick selection tool, and then select the sky. Very quickly, easy to select because the cap is a little contrasty, doesn't really matter. Plus, we're going to use some masking to it. So basically, sky is selected. Now press Control Command J. J for jug. Control J, Command J if you're using a Mac. And then it's on its own layer. Have a look. And if you're wondering how did I turn this layer solo, I held the Alt or Option key and clicked on it to make it solo and make it not solo time and again. Okay. So this is solo. All you have to do now, I'm on solo. Hold the control and select it. Click on it. This will select whatever there is in this layer. Okay, again I'm going to tell you, hold the controller command, click on it. Now go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and blur it out just when the banding goes away. I think this is a good place to be at. Click OK if you're satisfied. Now control a command D. Turn this back on, and that's pretty fine. Now these mountain ranges or the hill ranges are gone. Of course, we're going to use something called masks. So click on this mask button, take the brush, make sure the foreground color is black, decrease the flow to somewhere around 20-ish, and just remember, black are the areas which do not appear and white are the areas which appear. Right now, the mask is completely white, which means whatever there is in this layer is appearing, is visible. Now, if I paint anything with black, that area will become invisible. Black are the areas which are invisible. White are the areas which are visible. Did you get it? If you have any questions, make sure you ask that. I'm here for you. Okay, so now let's go ahead and decrease, just paint on a little bit with blacks. I'll just go ahead and increase the flow to somewhere around 40-ish. And it's looking fine. Maybe near her hat a little bit. And that looks pretty fine. Now to add some little extra effects, what you can do, you paint it a little extra. Okay, so to add some extra effects, you can add some film grain to it. So to add film grain, we have to create a merged layer. Okay, a merged new layer. So how do we do that? Press Control, Alt, Shift, and E. If you're using a Mac, that would be Command, Option, Shift, and E. That creates a new layer with everything merged down. Now, you can as well convert this as well to smart filters or smart object, and then convert for smart filters, and then go to filter, filter gallery, and there's an awesome effect called film grain. We're just going to apply that. So I've already selected it, artistic film grain, and you can play with the values the way you want. I think I'll decrease the highlight values. Maybe increase the intensity, I will a little bit. No, I guess this is fine. And that looks amazing to me. Click OK. It adds a little film grain. Have a look at the before and after. So this is the before. I mean, actually, this is the before. And this is the after. Looks very much more interesting, isn't it? So that was conversion using Adobe Camera RAW, and you can use the same targeted adjustment in Lightroom as well. Then you can proceed to Photoshop and do all those banding and stuff and film grain and whatever you want. So let's go ahead and answer some questions. Am I the only one that did not know if you hold Control and click the layer, it loads the selection? So great. Kevin, you know what? Even I didn't know this. I don't know, 2 years ago, and it literally blew my mind when I got to know about it. Very useful thing. Time and again, it's going to be useful to you, whether you're compositing, whether you're retouching. It's going to be useful to you. Okay. In very unexpected ways. You don't know when these small little things are useful to you in Photoshop. It's amazing, interesting. Now the next thing that we're going to use is channel mixer. Now I did talk about how to color grade using channel mixer. So in one of my previous tutorials, I talked about color grading. using Channel Mixer. If you have not watched it, watch it, and in that I go in depth about how to use Channel Mixer, how Channel Mixer is that functions right from the beginning, right from the basics. So here I'm going to talk about you can also create black and whites using Channel Mixer. So there are tons of ways to just do one thing, black and white conversion in Photoshop. So okay, so for this example we're going to use some other image. So let's use back the same image. Let's just use it. Okay, in this image we know the clouds are red. Okay, we know the skies are blue, we know the pyre is brown, which is a form of red, of course, and this is green. Now how does the Channel Mixer function? Okay, so the Channel Mixer can be applied as an adjustment layer and also as an adjustment. So if you go to image adjustments, it has the Channel Mixer, and you can also create an adjustment layer, Channel Mixer. Okay, now before going into Channel Mixer, it's very important that we understand how channels function. And that's what we did right now. We learned how channels function right in the beginning of the video. If you have missed that, you can always skip back after when the replay comes in. So any image is comprised of three colors. What are they? Red, green, and blue. And what are these? These are representations of red, green, and blue channel. In the red channel, this area is bright because this area has a lot of red. This area is very dark because this area has so less red. In the green, this is a little brighter, this is darker, because this has more green than this was in red channel. So that's pretty much wraps it up. Now, the Channel Mixer. So I would suggest that we add Channel Mixer using the adjustment layer, because it is much more, it is absolutely, I would say, non-destructive. So click on the Channel Mixer, it opens up the Channel Mixer properties. If you cannot see the properties, you can just double click on this icon, opens up the properties, boom. Now, what this actually does, let us understand how it actually deals with color. So here you have the preset. If you do some changes, you can go ahead and save that as a preset, and this will load as a preset, as simple as ABC. Now, this is output channel. Don't get confused. This is just target. This is just target. Now, if red is selected, we are targeting the reds. If green is selected, we are targeting the greens. If blue is selected, we are targeting the blues. Now, what do I mean by targeting? For example, if red is selected, now whatever we do to all these four sliders will only happen to the reds of the image. All this, especially all these three sliders will do is increase or decrease the amount of red. And that's pretty much it. We have locked red, we have targeted reds, and all these sliders will do will increase or decrease the amount of red, and that's it. Now you might say, why there are three sliders, red, green, and blue? Why there are three sliders and fourth slider? That's confusing. Here's why. The red slider will increase or decrease the amount of red in the red areas. The green slider will increase or decrease the amount of red in green areas. The blue slider will increase or decrease the amount of red in blue areas. Wasn't that interesting? Now, if I go ahead and increase reds, it increases red in the red areas which are already red, which is making the picture a lot more very ugly. If I increase reds in the green areas, look how that will look. The green areas become a little reddish. If I increase the reds in blue areas, look, the sky becomes a little reddish because the sky was a little bluish. You're increasing reds in the blue areas. You want to take away the reds from the blue areas. Increase the reds a little here. And that's how the color grading works. If you want to know more about this, listen to that. But if you want to create black and white, just check monochrome. But before you do that, let me just talk to you about this button. This is the reset button. Click on this and everything just resets to normal. Check this monochrome. Now, these three sliders take a completely different role. Now, the output channel is gray. It's not RGB, it's gray. Grayscale, okay? Now these sliders do a pretty much different thing. These sliders begin to control something called luminosity, just like the black and white adjustment layer. Now you might ask, why not use the black and white adjustment layer? Why to use this over the black and white adjustment layer? Here's what I would say. I get a lot of comments from you guys, and that's all valid. The why to use this method over that method. Today you talked about this method. Why to use this method over the last method? Would you please tell me why to use that method over this method? And here's the answer to that. Every method, there's no one method over the other method. Sometimes destructive retouching can be better than non-destructive retouching. It totally depends, okay, on a lot of factors. Every method has its own pros and cons, and we need to keep those pros and cons in mind. For example, in black and white adjustment layer, what we had all those many sliders. But here was the demerit. If you move the sliders too much, there would be banding. There would be those break in pixels that would not look nice. But in this, it would not happen so much. Okay, you just have 3 sliders, and all you need is 3 sliders actually, because these 3 colors just combine to give you every color that you right now see on the screen. If you just take a magnifying glass, zoom into your screen, you'll see small LEDs with 3 colors, red, green and blue. You'll actually see that. Just try it. I just tried it. Okay, so now we want to increase the reds a little bit, decrease the greens, and here's the thing, here's the fun with this. And there's a total here. Okay, this is the total luminosity. Let's reset that. Okay, and change back to monochrome. The total luminosity has to be 100. Think of it like this. You have 3 glasses, red glass, green glass, and blue glass. And think of luminosity as 1 liter of liquid. Luminosity, liquid, think of luminosity as 1 liter liquid, and think of red, green and blue as glasses. Now you take the luminosity liquid, totally 1 liter, and pour that equally in all 3 glasses. That's what we are getting right now. Actually it's 40-40-20 ratio, and you get the idea. Now if you take away the reds, the overall image becomes a little darker, because it's just like taking the red glass and pouring the liquid away, taking away the liquid. So the sum of the liquid, the sum of the quantity of liquid is now lesser than 1 liter, and that's why the whole of the image gets affected. Now, if you take the reds all the way to the left, it becomes completely black. And that's very evident, okay? So now, you minus 100, all of the red is gone now. All of the red is gone. If you take it more, it goes in minus, and look at the total, it totally goes in minus. So that's how it works. Think of luminosity or brightness as a liquid, and these 3 colors as glasses. They have to be at 1 liter. The summation of the quantity of the liquid has to be 1 liter for the image to be at perfect luminosity, the luminosity it came with. Okay, now for example, if you want to make the clouds more prominent, so we know the clouds are red. So what we would do, we would increase the reds, and we know the skies are blue. To balance that, we would decrease the blues. See? Now, as compared to black and white adjustment layer, there's very less break in pixels. There's not any banding, breaking is very less, and it's looking much more convincing. So if you master this, it's much more better. Now some of you might ask that, well, I wanted a little yellow there, yellow slider. If there was a yellow slider, it would be so great, but there's no yellow slider. What to do? Here's what to do. Okay, let me just explain. By the way, you can just take on the greens to get the total to 100, and you can do that just like that. You can do that. But here's what I would suggest. What if you want the yellows? There's no yellow slider. All you need to do, and we have already talked about this, and you might already know about this, that RGB is the opposite of what? CMY. R is the opposite of C. G is the opposite of, green is the opposite of M, magenta, and blue is the opposite of what? Yellow. RGB, CMY. Now, if you want to increase the yellows, what do you have to do? Decrease the blues. Right? So decrease the blues, but it decreases the overall brightness of the image. So the points to which you decrease the blues, you increase the same points by increasing the reds and the greens to balance that. Okay? Increase it a little bit to balance that, and that's pretty much how this works. Now it became a little dark, but you get the idea how to do it. Make sure the total is always 100. Now, here's where I would disagree, because again, as we already discussed, black and white conversion is an art. It's not a math. You can defy the rules. If it looks good to your artistic taste, please go ahead and defy the rules. You can go beyond 100, can go below 100. That's totally upon you. Okay, so that was using the channel mixture. Now, one of the tutorials which got really popular, one of my tutorials, and that was black and white conversion using calculations. And if you watched that, awesome. We're going to talk about it in a little detail. So we are using this photo, and by the way, if you have any questions, make sure you ask that. Patrick says, thanks for doing this, Unmesh. Your videos rock. Thank you so much, Patrick, for being here and joining us live. Okay, so let's turn this off. No, we don't want to save it. Now, what are calculations? Again, the theory, the fundamental concept, again goes back to what? Channels, right? You will be surprised to know. Now make a copy of this layer. Always make a copy. Now what to do? Go to image. Now apply image doesn't work on smart objects, so make sure it's raster image. Go to edit, image, and then apply image. Calculations. Actually, I'm so sorry. Calculations. We are using calculations now. It instantly goes black and white. Well, all you have to do, layer, you can choose merge or layer 1, doesn't really matter. Channel. Now here's the fun part. Choose the channel that you like. Red channel, choose the blue channel, and then see which one looks right. Choose the blending mode, overlay, or whatever you want, and then masking, and it will be a lot of fun. Now I know you didn't understand the thing. Here's what's happening. Okay, so for layman's concept, all you have to do, you have to go to this calculations, image calculations, choose the blend mode, choose the channel that you want. So I think I like blue here, and this one I think I'll go with green. Maybe I'll go with green here and blue here. Okay, now you can change the blend mode to one you like. Maybe I'll go with multiply. No, it doesn't look right. Maybe overlay, soft light. Okay, I think overlay was good, but it was too much. So you can always go ahead and decrease the opacity to see which one looks good, and then click on OK. Look at how much of a detail we have on his face. And once you're satisfied, click OK. It's a brilliant black and white. But this doesn't create a black and white. It creates a channel, hell of a channel. Now, a lot of confusion happening. Here's what is happening. Let's delete that. Come back to RGB. Let us understand. So as we explained before, every image is made up of what? 3 colors: red, green, and blue. Okay? And these are what? Just representations. This area has a lot of red, and that's why it's bright. Okay? If you choose blues, this area doesn't have so much of a red, and that's why it's dark. But instead, his dress, or whatever he's wearing, the scarf, it's blue, and that's why that's much more brighter than it was in reds. So, when we go to image, and when we go to calculation, let's come back to channels to have a better understanding. When we go to image calculations, all is happening is this. One channel over the other. If you choose source 1, let's choose layer 1, and source 2 layer 1, the layer which we are in right now, and if the source 1 is green and the source 2 is blue, all it means that we are taking the representation of the red channel as a layer to the top, and then we are taking the representation of the green channel, the blue channel, I think the green was on top, the green channel on the top, the blue channel on the bottom, and changing the blend mode of the layer which is above it, which is in this case green, to overlay. And that's pretty much it. So for this example, source 1 is green, source 2 is blue, and blend mode is overlay, and opacity is 99. It all means that we have the green channel at the top. Below the green channel, we have the blue channel, okay? And we have changed the opacity of the green channel to 99 and the blending mode of the green channel to overlay. And that's pretty much it. If you go ahead and select it, create a layer of it, create a layer of the blue, keep it one above the other, then do the exact same thing, the overlay and the opacity, the same result will turn up. So choose the one that you like. Blue. You can use blue 2 times, you get the idea. I think I'll use blue 2 times, that looks much better. I'll change maybe hard light. Opacity 100 looks good to me. Click OK. But before you click OK, what do you want your result to be? To be created as a new channel or a new document? Let's create a new channel and click OK. Okay. Now what you can do, if you want to add colors later, you can just click on this channel, press Ctrl or Command A, Ctrl or Command C for copy. First Ctrl A for all, select all, Ctrl C or Command C for copy, come back to RGB, come back to layers, create a new layer, and then press Ctrl or Command V. Now this creates that into a new layer. Now, there's another way of doing this, is that select the channel, select the alpha channel, go to Image Mode, Grayscale. Now this flatten layers, click OK. Discard other channels, click OK. Now this creates directly a grayscale image. But here's a disadvantage. If you want to add some other colors later, you are bounded. You have to go to image mode and change back to RGB again. So that's completely your call, whatever you want to do. I'm going to choose RGB again because, of course, obvious reasons, RGB is universally accepted, and also it's social media and all those stuff. RGB, if you want to add colors to it, if you want to add some tint to it, RGB is your way to go. Now to add some more contrast, here's what you can do. You can create, maybe just unlock this and create a solid color adjustment layer and make it black and just bring this beneath it. And then what you can do, you can just select this, create a mask, take the brush, make sure the foreground color is black, and then just paint in the background. Since the hair is black, it kind of matches, and then just paint in. Awesome, isn't it? Right? That's awesome. Now you gotta be a little careful, but you get the idea of what I'm actually doing. Right? So this is much more contrasty, looks much more nice. So have a look before and after. So that's something very optional. If you want to do. If you don't want to do, don't do. That's totally upon you. So let's have a look at the comments. Hector says, love how you make it so simple to understand. Great job. Great job. Thank you so much, Hector. Means a lot to me. So let's go ahead and delete the mask. Also, what you can do, you can just carve out the highlights. Here's how. So if you really want to add some more contrast, some more stuff, maybe add a little more details to the eyes. So create a new layer, and this is something which I have already talked about, and this is one of my favorite things to do. And I'm happy to share that again. I'm happy to share the secrets again. So create a circle, just like that. Okay, and then hold the Alt key or the Option key if you're using a Mac, and with the rectangular marquee tool or this one, the polygonal lasso tool, just draw a line perpendicular to the direction of light. So the direction of light is this, right? Perpendicular line, hold the Alt key, just subtract that more than a little half. So make an orange selection, slice selection, and delete the iris. Then again select the elliptical marquee tool, hold the Alt key, just to move it, hold the space bar, and we move it just like that, and fill it up with white. How to fill it up with white? Make sure the foreground color is white, press X to toggle between black and the whites and the foreground and the background, actually the foreground and the backgrounds, and press D to reset the swatches. Okay, if the swatches was something strange color, you can just press D to reset the swatches. Or for the same thing, there are two small buttons, this one to reset the swatches and this one to toggle. Make sure the foreground color is white, and then press Alt backspace to fill it up with white. Or if you're using a Mac, that would be Option Delete. Now, Control or Command D to deselect that, and then Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Add some blur to it. Now that is too much. Add so much of a blur so the edges become smooth. So I guess this would be nice. 10 is great. Click OK, and then change the blending mode to overlay. Okay, and now have a look at the before and after. So this is the before, this is the after. Now you can make a copy of it, hold the Alt key, just drag it and drop it right here. That's looking fantastic. Now you can also make a group of both of these and just duplicate that to increase the impact, and that's it. Now make a group of both of these groups decrease the opacity, and wow, have a look. Before, after. Wasn't that fantastic? Now let's, oh, Prabir says, nice tips. Maybe I missed the beginning. How can I get to see the full video? It will be uploaded. Andrew said that. Andrew, will it be uploaded? Now, let's add some more details. Let's add a levels adjustment layer. And then, you know, what was the blend mode that brightens up stuff? We did talk about that in our previous video. So screen is a blend mode which brightens up everything. So it doesn't matter which adjustment layer you choose, unless of course it's not making any changes to the photo. So change the blend mode to screen. This brightens up pretty much everything, but we don't want to brighten up everything. We want to brighten up only the highlights. So all you have to do, select the mask, press Ctrl or Command I to invert the mask, then take the brush and just paint on the highlights with a low flow. So get the flow to somewhere around 30 or 20-ish and paint with white on these areas. So once you go ahead and paint with white on these areas, make sure that these areas, you're not spilling it into the shadows, okay? So make sure you're not spilling it into the shadows. Just paint over this area. And by the way, thank you guys for joining in the live stream. Really appreciate that. If you're joining in right now. Okay. Just like that. A little bit on his nose. A little bit here. A little bit there. And you can take a little more time and do this properly. So have a look at the before and after, just a little before, after. Wow. Little bit there, maybe on his beard a little bit. Okay. Now, to add more drama, you can add a little blend diff to it. Right click on this and go to blending options. Take the slider of the underlying layer from left to right to make sure that we are not painting on the areas which are already in shadows. So if we do that, it's a little sharp. If you want to make it a little soft, hold the Alt key, click on this, break it down, and then, wow. It's much more smoother and just paints on the highlights. Now you can always go ahead and control the opacity to add more shine and dimension and according to what you want from it. So that pretty much wraps up all the 4 steps, and just stay. I want you to stay because this is the bonus tip which nobody has ever talked about when it comes to black and white conversions, and when it comes to the moments where the image is really, really special, or maybe really, really difficult to do, or maybe you have a lot of time on a Sunday morning and if you really want to check this out, this is very high end. Now let's come back to our main image. I don't want to save it. Let's click no, and let's come back to this image. Now in this image, we know that we know that her lips are also red, a different tone of red. Her clothes are also red. Now when we use the red slider, okay, if we go to black and white, and when we use the red, it affected both her lips and her clothes. So what if I just want to affect the lips? What if we just want to do that? There's a way. What if you just want to select a specific color, and that specific color, and the sliders don't exist for that color? What do you do then? Then you use the hue saturation adjustment layer. Now you said, don't use the hue saturation adjustment layer. That's bad. Yes, that is. But if you use it this way, you will be able to control each and every color that you want in the picture. Here's how to do it. Add a hue saturation adjustment layer. Okay, you want to make the lips area a little darker. Here's what you have to do. Instead, don't convert this into black and white. Don't take away the saturation. Just have a good selection of the color of the lips. Here's what to do. Click on this button and just click once on the lips. Okay, take the hue all the way to the left just for indication purposes. Make it a little bigger so that you can see what's happening. Now, see the two bars there? The top bar is the target bar. The bottom bar is the result bar. Okay, if you move the hue, look, this area is changing. This area is constant. The one on the top, that's the target. That's the color that we are targeting. And this is the result of that targeted area. Now, all you have to do is to make that area very narrower. See, right now we are targeting just this area. So move it and figure out a sweet spot where just the lips are selected. Then move the sliders a little bit outwards, a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left, so that whole of the lips is selected, but not the clothes. Okay, if I move it too much, it also begins to select the clothes. Okay, so that's a pretty good selection. Not awesome, pretty good selection. There we go. Bring the hue to 0. Now, this is the fun part. Take the lightness down. And when you take the lightness down, the lips become what? Dark. But it's not black and white. So what it's not black and white? Add another hue saturation adjustment layer and take away the saturation. Now, you can name this lips. If that was not interesting, I would love that you would leave a hate comment. That is something which I discovered 2 or 3 days ago and literally, I would say, blew my mind. You can create one for her clothes, one for her skin, one for the sky, one for her hair, exactly selecting the exact color. Let us try a couple more things. Let us create another hue saturation adjustment layer. And then maybe affect just her eyes, maybe. And this time let's turn this one off so that we can see the colors. Can we do it? I don't know. Let's try doing the eyes. Take the saturation all the way to the left and maybe make it a little just like that. Can we do it? Yeah, we can do a little bit. And then bring back and then turn on this one and then look at what kind of effect it has. If I make it darker, wow, it adds a much more dimension to it. If I make it brighter, add something to the eyes. Now here's the fun. If I make it brighter, it adds so much more dimension to the eyes, but it makes the skin a little bad. Here's what I would do. Create a mask. Controller Command I, take the brush and just paint on the eyes with white. Flow, 100, just on the eyes. There you go. Before, after, before, after. Now you can name this eyes. Now this is the way, minutely going from bottom to top, naming everything, creating. Now this will take hours and hours. You can just even select individual flowers on her dress. You can do whatever you want. That's a lot of fun to do. So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for today's black and white conversion. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, and if you want more tips, tricks and tutorials, don't forget to go to my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/PiXimperfect, and make sure you hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much for being there for me, being here with me. I'm really grateful that you spent your evening, morning or afternoon, whatever time zone you're from, with me. I'm grateful. Have a great day, great evening, or good night if it's night. Thank you so much.